Lerner.
Arden and I crossed paths years ago when she played for the youth orchestra. She was obviously the most talented player in the group, and little did I know that she would come to collegiate and join the contemporary ensemble shortly after I met her. Arden's presence in the band has made me a better musician and definitely a better teacher. Arden taught me what the range is on an alto saxophone. She taught me that string players read C major while she reads E flat major. She taught me how to transpose down a step and a half of what it means to hear a C and read it as an A. Music nerd stuff. Arden taught me that the saxophone can mimic the voice and can single-handedly make your knees buckle from its sonorous tones. Think of Careless Whisper. Arden also taught me a couple of shortcuts when we would create her music for the band. She taught me how easy it is to take screenshots of music on YouTube. She taught me how to take screenshots of MuseScore. Arden saved me a lot of money. Arden's really good at helping me with my technological challenges. Moving on to Arden's greatest hits. Gold record memories. Arden zooming into class with her best friend at her house. Arden zooming into class while driving with the family, going to the beach. Platinum record memories. Arden plays her saxophone with a cloth over her bell, that's the thing at the end, and stands on the opposite side of our band. Arden playing her first concert for collegiate outside in front of a tent. She learned the importance of clothespins, and she also played injured. Arden's facial expression when she heard Twist and Shout for the first time. Diamond record memories. Arden playing at homecoming and learning the importance of a tent. Thank the Vellies for supplying shade for our dear Arden. Arden never complained about song choice until I tried to suggest Bring Me to Life by Evanescence. Arden plays every concert with style and perfection, never making a mistake and always bringing the house down. I end with Gary Rafferty's lyrics from Baker Street and the memory of Arden ripping through every sax entrance. You used to think that it was so easy. You used to say that it was so easy, but you're trying. You're trying now. Another year, and then you'd be happy. Just one more year, and then you'd be happy, but you're crying. You're crying now. Arden, now it's your turn.
Every person in this room has a morning routine that they consistently carry out, leading them to arrive at school each morning. Getting up, making your bed, eating breakfast, or anything else that may be part of your school morning routine. To actually get to school, most people have a reasonable drive. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 25, maybe you can even walk to school. Well, not me. Every day I have at least an hour and a half of driving to get to and from school. 45 minutes each way if there happens to be no traffic, but most days that's not the case. It always comes as a shock when I tell people this, and with good reason. Common reactions I've gotten consist of staring at me for a few seconds with an open mouth, asking me where in the world I live, or just asking me why. Honestly, I had all of these same questions when my family first moved into our home. The closest convenience store is 15 minutes away from my house, and the friend who lives closest to me is 25 minutes away from my house. All these trips for whatever I need or want to do on any given day allow for lots and lots of time in the car, and in this time there have been some interesting things to happen. The one drive that I will never forget was the day that it took me more than 2 whole hours to get to school. I left my house at 7 a.m. that morning, like I usually do, but ended up arriving at school right around 9:20 a.m., leaving me room to attend the last 10 minutes of first block that day. Mr. Lerner, I'm sorry if you thought I ditched your class that morning, I promise I didn't. Before I leave the house each morning, I check GPS to make sure there are no major traffic jams or car accidents that I'll need to avoid, helping me choose which route to take. That morning, when I checked the GPS, everything was clear, so I set off on my way to school by Interstate 71. That was where I went wrong. Soon enough, I was driving on the highway when everything came to a complete stop. I waited for a good few minutes, thinking the traffic would pass, but it didn't. I decided to recheck the GPS and was faced with more bad luck. You know how if you're using an app for directions and the road will turn yellow or maybe a little bit red to indicate slow-moving traffic? That morning, the map was so dark red that it was nearly black. I didn't even know the colors went that dark on those apps. After realizing how bad the backup really was and panicking for about 20 minutes, I realized that I wasn't getting anywhere anytime soon. I emailed Miss Page to explain the situation, but after how late I was that morning, I think she only believed me because of how messed up my face looked from sobbing crying in my car. I hope the person stopped next to me on the highway didn't look over at me, but also at that point, having a random person seeing me crying in my car wasn't a top concern. At the end of the day, I had a much smoother drive home after school and promised myself that I would never take Interstate 71 to get to school again. So far, I haven't broken that promise. While I may frequently tell stories about weird things that have happened to me on my drives or complain about just driving in general, I hate to admit to my parents who forced me to move so far away that at the end of the day, I do think I've learned quite a lot from all my time alone in the car. I've definitely learned a thing or two about patience and how to deal with insanely awful drivers, but the main thing that I've taken away from it is being able to sit with my own thoughts and become better at forming my own opinions. Like many people, sitting alone with my own thoughts is something that used to make me uncomfortable, but I guess driving alone for so much time has served as exposure therapy in a way and kind of cured my discomfort. Forming my own opinions without the influence of others is something that I've struggled with a lot over the years, but learning to listen to and appreciate my thoughts has helped me with this. While it may be random, one thing that I have a very strong opinion about is the color orange. I absolutely hate it. I don't understand what people like about such an ugly color. Although I'm saying how ugly I think the color is, there is a shade range that I can appreciate. One night, when I was driving home, there was a gorgeous sunset that was right within my view. The sky was filled with hues of pink, purple, and yes, orange. As I was staring at it, I started to think that maybe the color orange isn't all that bad. While I do still hate orange most of the time, I realized that it actually can be pretty in certain circumstances. This may sound insignificant, but thinking about the different shades of orange has led me to acknowledge the duality of given situations when forming opinions. Just like the color orange and its different shades, a strong opinion can consist of many different components and doesn't necessarily have to be strict or one-sided. I've accepted that it's still completely okay to agree with or learn from the words of others and branch off from them, but that finding where my thoughts fit in is even more important. I'm not saying that I'm now a master at forming and sharing my own strong opinions, but having so much time to consider my thoughts has definitely helped me to grow in this area. The way I feel about orange will likely not be a big factor in changing my life, but I have become opinionated about other things that will affect my life. Having previously lived just a block away from the school I used to attend, and now having a 45-minute drive to Collegiate has definitely made a few things clear in my mind. I've learned that when I get to make my own decisions on where I will live in the future, I won't be building a long commute into my schedule. 7 years of being dragged back and forth between county lines just to complete daily tasks has been quite enough for me. I won't miss having to pack an extra bag when I leave the house, just in case I decide to do something last minute that I didn't have in mind that morning. In the future, I look forward to having real neighbors and having a neighborhood or town to walk around in. But as much as I plan to change the way I live in the future, I find comfort in the fact that I will always be able to come back home and find the distance that I have now. I know that as much as I complain now, one day, maybe even soon, I might actually miss home and its quiet comforts. I won't ever miss my hour-and-a-half commute every day, but I'll miss having extra time in the car to listen to music or driving a half an hour to Target with my sister so that we have plenty of time to gossip on the way there and back. I won't miss having to fill up on gas twice a week, but I'll miss being able to observe myself and everything going on around me on my drives. No matter how far away I live from the people and things around me, I know that because of my growth through driving, I'll be able to appreciate any distance. In the car, I've learned to embrace whatever may be going on in my head at that moment, and I advise all of you to try to do the same next time you have a long drive ahead of you. But please, for the life of me, always double check the GPS before you leave the house.
Our second speaker today is Sonali Gulati. Sonali will be introduced by her mother, Geeta Gulati.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Sonali, for the honor and privilege to introduce you to your school. I believe I'm the proudest mother in this room today. I know I face stiff competition down there, but I believe I win this one. Sonali and my story starts 18 years ago. It'll be 18 in just a few days when I set out to adopt her. I said to the adoption agency that I wanted a biracial baby so she could fit with me and our family. Well, when I got to the hospital to get her, to my surprise, there was this baby with blue eyes and blonde hair. I thought I was getting the wrong baby there for a moment, but they assured me that she was mine. Well, she gradually changed, and nobody has ever once questioned me about being her mom or her about being part of my family ever since. So from that first day on, Sonali has been challenging me and surprising me every single day. So I would like to share with you two of my memories from collegiate of Sonali that basically show who she is. The first was in kindergarten with Miss Lori Hendricks and Miss Orr's class. It is a memory of Sonali on this stage right here, looking very, very unhappy. She was on stage with her class, hiding behind her classmates and being shy while everyone else was singing. Of course, it was a good thing the class didn't rely on her singing skills to carry the song, because I don't think she said a word, My second enduring memory of Sonali as a kid at collegiate is just down the hallway in Miss Freitag and Miss Chardine's class, and it was the first day of first grade. The teachers were playing a little ice-breaking game, and it was a word game where they put up short words on the board, and the kids were supposed to spell them out and say them out loud. So this one kid spelled out the word G-R-I-D, grid, and said instead G-I-R-D, gird. So when that happened, Sonali and I were sitting next to each other. We both turned to each other, and neither of us said a word, and she's got this gleam in her eye, and I, of course, had to stop myself from laughing. So to this day, Sonali and I, whenever we bring up the topic of the word gird, we both start giggling, and the memory is alive every time we talk about it. So there you have it. That's Sonali in a nutshell. She has a wicked, subversive sense of humor and an exterior that gives nothing away. No accident that she has received the Chili Bean Award back in 5th grade, the Effortless Player in Tennis Award. That's a dubious title if I ever heard one. Underneath that calm exterior is this intelligent person with amazing observational powers, analytical ability, and a sense of humor. I am the luckiest mother on this planet to have the honor to introduce you to Sonali Gulati.
Okay. I have recently discovered I'm a grievance collector. I first got the term grievance collector from my mother, and while she wasn't talking about me, I immediately realized that I fit the description. The definition of a grievance collector is someone who remembers every last slight or misfortune they have suffered and knows who to blame for it. With many of these grievances, most of the blame lands on myself, but through my years of collecting, I've realized that I have a tendency to hold on to the negative, often putting it over the positive. I see now that I need to change my views. A lot of speeches are about overcoming obstacles, the aftermath of an event, and what someone learned from it. Unfortunately, I am turning 18 in exactly a week, and I'm still at the beginning of my journey. I'm not sure that I've gotten good at overcoming obstacles just yet, but I have gotten better at recognizing when I get so caught up in the bad that I don't appreciate the good. Realization is the first step to achieve my goal of freeing myself from the past to move on to a better, more peaceful future. I believe my grievance collecting officially started at a young age, since I was the younger sister constantly taking blame for my older sister's actions. But I think a strong start to my journey would be addressing the issue that I see as the beginning of my recent grievance collecting: the North Dakota hockey incident. This incident has put a wedge between my family and me for many years, and I'm finally ready to address it and let it go. It was December of 2021, approximately 3 weeks before Christmas, when my parents decided to reveal that they had planned a big surprise for my sister and me. We were all sitting on the couch while they hyped up this huge, amazing gift. It was unbearable not knowing, especially when I found out that I was the only one not let in on this secret. I couldn't wait to find out what it was, and after a lot of pestering, my mother couldn't keep it a secret any longer. She finally told me that we were going to North Dakota for an ice hockey game. My sister saw the puzzled look on my face, and she spit out that the game was the University of North Dakota against Cornell. Considering the fact that we had never watched hockey before and the fact that my family hates the cold, I was very confused, but I put on a happy face and spent the rest of the time talking about how excited I was. My pretend excitement didn't last long, as I began to actually become obsessed with this ice hockey team. I followed them on everything, even attaching their game schedule to my calendar. I streamed their games on sketchy websites, spent hours on the campus store website searching for the perfect crew neck, and I watched so many ice hockey for beginners videos that they still pop up on my recommended. I even forced myself to watch the Ralph Engelstead Arena Tour every day to prove how invested I was. By the time I finished my research, I was basically a super fan. My family supported this and egged me on for weeks, even telling me that we'd be staying in a ski resort. Then my godmother finally broke in the parking lot before a cycle bar class. She told me it was all a lie. We were not going to North Dakota, and no one cared about ice hockey. I spent the whole class in angry tears, biking to loud pop songs in the corner of the studio away from my godmother. I was actually heartbroken, and I refused to talk to my family for days. I don't think I've ever felt that level of betrayal in my life, and for what? Before they created this lie, I didn't even know the University of North Dakota was a school, and I had no interest in ice hockey or North Dakota. I can't explain why I was so personally offended by this, but I genuinely thought that I would never be able to forgive my family. After the cycle bar class, I remember storming into the house, glaring at my mother, running upstairs, and sobbing really loudly to make them feel guilty about it. I continued to sulk over this, even after they revealed the real gift, my dream tickets to the Ravens-Steelers game in Baltimore. Unfortunately, not even my love for football was enough to overcome my grievance. All I could think about was that they had lied to me. In the end, a COVID outbreak and a snowstorm intervened, and none of the family made it to Baltimore for the Ravens game. Instead, we spent 3 days cooped up together in the Opryland Hotel in Nashville. Getting to Nashville was not easy either. What should have been a 2-hour drive turned into a 7-hour drive, and where we had to drive backwards on the highway. I wasn't sure how well this weekend would turn out, considering we already were all annoyed with each other before we even checked into the hotel. It was rough at first, but we managed to find fun in what was offered. Exploring what we could in the city and hotel was exactly what we needed. We were all bored out of our minds by the end of the weekend, but spending time away with my family with nothing but ourselves to keep us company ended up being one of the best winter family trips we've ever taken. After the trip, I was pretty much over the lie, only bringing it up on special occasions. I realized then that the lie didn't matter as much as spending time with your family does, whether it's a football game or in a hotel. But I always held on to that experience as a reason not to fully trust those around me. Of course, I know deep down that the North Dakota incident was just a joke with good intentions, and that my family loves me, but I've also learned that I'm not a huge fan of surprises. Writing this and sharing this story has made it even more clear to me that this is a ridiculous grudge, and that letting go of it will free me of any reservations I have towards my family. Letting go of this grievance will result in peaceful Sunday night dinners and a trusting bond. While this isn't near the worst grievance I carry with me, letting go of this one makes me confident that I will be able to hold myself accountable for the rest of my journey. I've always let the past hold me back from the great things in life, and I'm over it. I no longer want to spend my days stressing over situations that are long gone. Though it's only been about a week so far, I've realized how peaceful life is without the negatives weighing me down. No matter how long it will take, I'm determined to get rid of my grievance collection, so much so that I've already decided on the next big grievance I will be conquering. When I return to India in a month, my goal is to make amends with my one true enemy, Sir. To sum it up, Sir is my family's masseuse, and we've had a torn relationship since 2019 when he decided to reveal my arm injury, which I kept a secret in order to compete, to my entire family during a yoga lesson. This resulted in me going home, getting a transplant, and swearing to never do gymnastics again. Even though I can easily admit that this wasn't actually his fault, once I got the diagnosis, I knew exactly who I was going to blame. It has come to the point where I physically run away from Sir whenever he's in the house, and I refuse any contact with him. However, I cannot live with this tension anymore when I'm in India. So it's decided. Sir and I are going to rebuild our friendship in March, and when I come home, one more grievance will be gone. If anyone takes any inspiration from this speech, I hope it's this. Don't hold on to things too tightly. Bad things happen to everyone, and instead of letting them take over, I found that it's so beneficial to just learn how to find a way to move on and focus on the good. I've accepted my grievance collecting ways, and I know with enough effort, one day I will be able to say that I am not a grievance collector. But for now, I appreciate your support of my journey. Thank you.
Our third speaker today is Virginia Ritchay. Virginia will be introduced by her sister Charlotte.
I was skeptical if I was the right person to introduce Virginia when she initially asked me. Then I realized it's because she and I have done pretty good jobs at being each other's sisters. Well, for the most part. You've been teaching me independence since I was very young. When I was 10, I distinctly remember following you down the ski slope and realizing I shouldn't have, as I fell on some ice and lost both of my skis. Instead of hearing my relentless calls to you, you innocently skied on and abandoned me on the hill for a random couple to find me in tears as they tried to help me. I'm now realizing you probably didn't hear me, and I was probably overreacting when I said I never wanted to ski again. Luckily, you made it up to me a few years ago when you patiently fanned my legs and back as aloe dried, which was very much appreciated seeing as I forgot to wear sunscreen and got so burnt that I got sun poisoning. Just like you didn't mind skiing off without me, you also didn't mind staying up insanely late to help me. You taught me many things, but most importantly to cherish the moments, good or bad. I will miss you immensely when you're in college next year, but I'm honored to introduce my sister, Virginia.
When I was about 4 years old, I announced to my family, when I grow up, I want to be a hooker. This was probably a bit of a shock for them, but it all started in KCK, Florida, when my grandfather asked my brother and me what we wanted to be when we grew up. They were probably expecting a firefighter, a veterinarian, or even an astronaut, but not hooker. It seemed very reasonable to me at the time. I had no idea that my idea of a hooker was not the same as their idea of a hooker, and I was upset that my family was laughing at me. I thought being a hooker would be a fun and practical job. I was embarrassed and definitely a little frustrated they weren't taking me seriously. You see, we spent all morning fishing, and while I enjoyed that, I had a lot more fun sticking my hand into the yellow bait bucket full of squirming shrimp. I took my time looking for the fattest shrimp, scooping it up with my bare hand, and then carefully baiting the shrimp onto the hook. I could do that every day of my life and be the happiest person on earth. I just wanted to be a hooker. I wanted to hook the shrimp on fish hooks and not hang out on street corners. I wish I could go back and tell myself not to get so caught up in the little things, not to cry over spilled milk. I was so upset over such a small thing and allowed it to ruin my mood for the rest of the evening. It wasn't until later I understood why they were laughing so hard and learned to laugh at myself and let go a little. Life is a lot simpler when you're young. You have so much innocence and things are pretty easy. I quickly learned how challenging life could be when I developed debilitating chronic migraines in January of 8th grade. Suddenly, everything got a lot more complicated. Things like hanging out with friends, playing soccer, or even small daily tasks like taking a shower now became a huge challenge. But this wasn't going to stop me. I had things to do, dreams to achieve. No way was I going to let migraines slow me down. We all have limitations. Whether they be physical, mental, or emotional, they are all something we have to take into consideration. I have spent the last 4 years testing my limits, pushing myself to see how much I could do before my body gives out on me. One of the biggest tests of my limits happened the summer going into my sophomore year. I was set to hike Isle Royale National Park. The island can only be accessed by a 4-hour ferry ride or seaplane. I was supposed to hike the island this summer going into my freshman year, but then COVID happened and everything got postponed. When I was finally able to go, I was pumped. This was supposed to be the most important and fun 2 weeks of my life. All I had to hike the island was 7 other girls from my cabin and a 65-pound backpack stuffed to the brim. The first 5 days were going well, but on day 6, I developed a persistent migraine that was starting to diminish my abilities to complete the rigorous 10-mile-a-day hikes. My counselor decided I would take a shortcut to Wendigo in hopes I would be able to recover and finish the rest of the island. Now, I thought this was pretty close to the end of the world, because I would be missing Rainbow Cove with its beautiful red rocks and open water view, arguably the best campsite in the whole island. I was absolutely devastated, but to my surprise, the impromptu campsite at Wendigo had its own excitement. While I was not relaxing on a rocky beach, I was at a picnic table playing cards, watching tons of these huge moose wade through the creek nearby. I also watched my counselor sprint to the bathroom in hopes to flee from the moose that had walked up to her campsite. She's definitely afraid of moose and locked herself in the bathroom for half an hour. After resting for 2 days, I wasn't getting any better. My counselors made the right but dreadful call of saying I needed to be evacuated from the island so I can get better treatment. Hearing this was soul-crushing. I had just reunited with the rest of my cabin as they made it to Wendigo, and I was excited to rejoin them for the rest of the hike. I've been looking forward to this trip for the past 2 years. My brother did it with no problem and told stories about it all the time. I couldn't imagine telling my family I wasn't able to finish the island. Since a ferry would take too long, I had to go home by seaplane. As much as I hated having to leave the island, I was so excited about being able to ride a seaplane for the first time in my life. This gave me an opportunity to reflect. I was sad to leave, but not wanting to let the things out of my control me, I reflected on all the things I was able to control, all the things I learned about myself, and all the fun I had. I left in the morning of day 10 of 14. As I got ready to board the seaplane, there were 5 other passengers, all old men. The plane was tiny, and I was dreading having to sit squished in the back of the plane with them. Then the pilot asked if anyone wanted to sit in the co-pilot seat. Obviously, I said yes, because 1, more space, and 2, who wouldn't want to co-pilot a seaplane? This was probably one of the coolest experiences of my life, and I didn't want to admit that I was almost happy I had to leave the island early. While my time on the island wasn't exactly how I wanted it to go, I think it was for the best I was evac'd. Life isn't easy, and it often doesn't go how you'd like it to. That makes me think of what my dad always tells me. It's all about attitude. You can either sulk over the challenges life gives you and let them define you, or you can choose to see good and accept the things that are out of your control and move on. The point is to allow you to accept things in life that are completely out of your control. It's a way of looking at inconveniences as being beneficial. It invites us to see things out of our control as areas for growth and transformation. Mistakes and setbacks are not indicators of failure, but rather stepping stones towards new growth and a better understanding of yourself. Adopting this mindset and thinking about it when I might be upset about something out of my control has helped ground me and allowed me to have a little more peace in my life. As much as I would still love to be a hooker or finish my hike on Isle Royale, I've learned the thing that I value most in life is to be happy. To be happy with the body and life I have, no matter what limits it may have. To be happy with who I am. Thank you.